Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of HOA Today, the video podcast for HOA leaders. I'm Mark Foster on the HOA Leadership Network. Well, today we're going to talk about property management. It's a relatively young service in the growing HOA industry. And like all very young and evolving services, property management has some misconceptions about its role. And we're going to talk about that and some predictions of the future in property management with the president of FirstService Residential, Broc Coen. Broc, good morning and welcome to HOA Today.
Morning, Mark. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Broc, you're relatively new to your role as president of FirstService Residential here in Minnesota. What brought you to this role and what did you do before?
Immediately preceding this, I spent some time in the healthcare sector for a local organization that was both an insurer and a provider of services. We had a series of clinics and hospitals, but my role there was primarily just real estate and facility management support, as well as office services. And so that was kind of exciting during the pandemic. And then prior to that, I spent some time with Cushman and Wakefield in their asset management, managing a large financial services client locally here, downtown Minneapolis, as well as their nationwide network. And then I spent 20 years with the Best Buy organization, growing in the development life cycle of all their stores. They started off as a regional organization when I joined, and we grew to over 1,500 units nationally and internationally during that time. So my favorite thing is the building management and asset management portion of what I've done. And prior to that, I did spend some time too as a contractor, so I can appreciate what it takes to do manual labor.
Well, it sounds like you've got the background for this type of challenge. And, property management, as I mentioned, still relatively new resource in HOA land, just really coming into the fore over the last, say, 20 years or so. What would you say, Broc, are some of the major benefits, in your view, of having a property manager as an HOA board?
I would say that by far and away, one of the most important things that we do at FirstService is we try to operate from the sense of trying to simplify the lives of boards and their operations, as well as the residents of communities. So one of the pillars of how we operate is to maintain and preserve communities and the buildings in which we support. That's a primary concern of ours because it's people's most important asset. In a lot of cases, right? And therefore, they deserve to have those assets appreciate over time, and that's one of the roles we play. Another important thing that we do is education. So the laws are ever changing, as I'm sure that we'll talk about a little bit today with the Minnesota legislature proposed for next year. There's just a lot that goes on, and it's really hard to stay on top of those types of things. And that's the role that we play, is to try to make things simple and easy to navigate for our customers.
In our network, the HOA Leadership Network, we hear from a lot of members about property management and its role. There seems to be a lot of misconceptions. Wondering from your standpoint, what are some of those main misconceptions that you hear from board leaders about the role of property management?
Yeah, I'll say first and foremost, from my own perspective, right, is not knowing and deeply understanding from a resident's perspective what it is that an HOA does. So I go back to that educational comment. It's difficult for somebody that lives in an HOA and just pays their dues, and sometimes they don't even know who their managing agent is. And so it's a lack of awareness, a lack of education, and even sometimes people say to me, like, FirstService gets paid all kinds of money every month, and we only get a small portion of those HOA dues, and all of the other dues go for things like insurance, maintaining the properties and all the common elements, pools, anything that would be an amenity that exists in the community. So there's a lot that goes into it, and then there's a lot of planning in some of the buildings and communities that we manage as well. It's a difficult thing to navigate, and so I think when people see their dues increase, they don't really see the value or understand. And I think that's the biggest challenge is making sure that there's an awareness of not only just what are you getting for your money, but more importantly is what is it doing for the future of preserving those assets, like I talked about earlier, because in a lot of cases, that's what people look at as part of their nest egg for retirement.
So you've had to address some internal challenges at FirstService Residential. We know that you've talked about it. You've had a tough year in 2024, especially as it has related to some accounting functions. And I think some of our members of our network and some of those who have worked with you directly would love to hear how you've addressed those, how you've rectified that, and kind of where you stand today.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. It is an area of concern, and it's not just FirstService Residential in Minnesota. It's FirstService nationally. I mean, we are a national organization across North America, I guess, rather. And one of the things that we're seeing, or have seen last year, was the absence of a lot of the talent pools that we could draw from in the accounting function and profession in particular. That is extremely challenging in our market as well, because we're almost like an isolated market in Minneapolis and St. Paul that we can draw from. And so the loss of some of the talent that occurred when I joined the organization, we lost a couple of key leaders as well as a couple of key contributors. That was one of the things that I had to address right away, and it's been an uphill climb for a little more than my first year in role. But one of the things that we've done is we went back and sought out the people that used to work for FirstService Residential in the accounting function and see if we could bring them back. And I'm proud to say that we brought back, I think we're at 5 or 6 people in total that had worked at FirstService previously within the last 2 years that we brought back. And one of the bigger challenges is compensation. So not only do you have an absence of talent pool to draw from, but then the competition that ensued following the pandemic that created almost this never-ending increase that was available to people that you could work essentially anywhere, right? And in the absence of a lot of people coming into the profession too, you've got this scarcity that drives up value, and it limits your ability to procure that talent. That's one of the most important functions that we offer is accounting services, to make sure that, again, financially sound for the community. We're taking care of the community. We have funding for reserves for the future. And so it was a very big pain point for us. But what we've done is like I said, is we brought back a lot of key people that knew how to do what FirstService did, in particular with our accounting software and platforms and processes. And then additionally is we've gone out and expanded beyond our borders of Minnesota to say, how can I leverage outside resources across my North American network with FirstService Residential, being that we do operate in so many places. We're 30 markets across the US and Canada. We've tapped into that network as well, so that in the absence, if somebody does find an opportunity that they move on to, we want to embrace that and endorse that. We believe in personal development, specifically in this function, because it's a high need category. But at the same time, we're trying to hedge against the absence of that talent to make sure that our operations can continue successfully. So it was leadership, and then it was support for our leaders, which we've addressed. We've restructured the team, so we've got support for not only the director teams, and the manager now is a new role, and then we've got a supervisory layer too. So we've got multiple layers for not only our leadership teams to go deep inside of the team to solve issues for our clients, but also for the team members that are actually performing the accounting functions to reach up into their network to get support as well. And we endeavor to get back to the place where our clients could reach out direct to our accounting team members. It's just that we're in the infancy stages of getting things back on track. And it's been a long road, but we feel really good about it. In the last 2 months in particular, we've achieved over a 98% success rate in delivering financials on time per our contracted dates. Whereas previously when I joined, if you were to look about a year earlier, we were about 32%. So we've really come a long way, and extremely proud of the team. And then the management team, importantly too, is to try to defend their peers and make sure that we're doing right by our customers and trying to solve problems and answer questions to the best of our ability for anybody that serves any of our clients.
Well, against that backdrop, certainly you've got challenges that are ongoing, given the business that you're in. Certainly, you have to cater to HOAs across a wide geographic area. Many of these HOAs with different sizes, different needs, and then you've got this constant churn of HOA board leaders coming on and off board. So to some degree, you're sort of starting over a lot. So how does a firm like FirstService Residential adapt to that kind of variability?
I would say we lean heavily on our experience. So our employee tenure is, I think, right around or just under 7 years in total across all of our associates. We've got over 600 associates in Minnesota. That's extremely high for an organization of our size. That's one of the first and foremost, one of the things that I would say that is very important with boards that do change for a variety of reasons. People move out of communities, move out of homes. People move into homes and come on boards. I was just with a client meeting or a client during a meeting that rather this last week or 2 weeks ago, I think. And we were talking about this is a new condominium for this individual. They've never been in a condominium in a high-rise situation before, and they've opted to join the board to try to understand what it is that the board does, how does a condominium operate, how does that community operate, because it's something new and something different. And so therefore, with that churn, we try to make sure that, again, we have educational opportunities for our board members. It doesn't matter if you're 1 week in or 10 years into a role. A lot of roles in a lot of boards prior to the pandemic, again, we saw people on boards for, years and years and years, and there was no change, no churn. Because there was that lack of interest that we talked about earlier, or just a lack of awareness, I guess is a better way to put it. And now after the pandemic, we've seen a lot more change, right? So people, earlier retirements, just a lot more change on those boards, as you had mentioned, Mark. And I think because of that, one of the things that we're getting back to is in-person board trainings. And then beyond that, we're looking to partner with HOA Leadership Network and other organizations to try to tap into the collective knowledge base of peer buildings and peer communities for new board members. So how do I connect a treasurer at one community that has a similar building or similar scenario that they're trying to navigate with somebody that is well experienced and well versed as a treasurer that's been doing it for multiple years? So how can we put those two pieces together and get access to peer networks and try to create that and embrace that and enable that through social commitments that we're endeavoring to take on in the next year or two?
Certainly, technology has been, I suppose, a love-hate has maybe been on your side, but I'm sure it brings some challenges. So technology is changing a lot of industries. It certainly is found its way into property management. Broc, can you tell us a little bit how technology is changing the way that FirstService Residential interacts with HOA boards and HOA residents?
Yeah, one of the most exciting things that we have going on right now is HODA. So it's our homeowner digital assistant. And so what we've done at FirstService is to try to take a more omni-channel based approach to customer care. So if you are somebody in a different demographic where you don't want to make a phone call, you don't want to go to a meeting, you don't want to submit a ticket, you can text. So the prevalence of text, and so that omni-channel approach is text, calls, customer care, after-hours support, emergency support. You can call your manager direct. Our managers are on call. We have a rotating on-call program. And then that introduction of a homeowner digital assistant for those easier questions like, what are my dues next month? Or what have my dues increased from last year? What were they last year to this year? We've leveraged AI technologies to a place now where we've launched HODA, and it's taking the burden off of our managers from a technology standpoint. And then beyond that, we have resident support services. So coming out of the pandemic, we realized that more people spending time at home, they're paying attention to their communities. They're wondering, why does this look like that? What happened with that? And so again, that engagement piece has increased more than I think anybody could have imagined. And so beyond just the AI capabilities, is we've dissected the role of the manager and try to embrace the work-life balance and preserve that for our teams. And that's what helps with our tenure in the sense that we've created more of an administrative team that supports our management team, and then separated board support from resident support. Because as you can imagine, when you get into these larger communities, it's one person, one manager against 1,500 people or more, and that's just unrealistic to try to support that kind of volume. And so we're leveraging technology to do that through ticket-based systems, and then our Connect platform too is. Our Connect platform is proprietary for FirstService, but then also we have the ability to lay on top of that other systems that are out there, such as BuildingLink, for example, if a client chooses to pursue that as an opportunity. And so we're trying to open up our platform to accommodate other softwares and tools and integrate it, while we're also simultaneously recreating the entirety of our platform as it is today, to both simplify the accounting function, integrate the accounting function to catch up with some of the other systems that are out there. And so we've got about 4 years left on our 5-year roadmap to make that happen. And then the last piece I would say is that work order management. So managing the vendors and all of the vendors that are out there that support our communities and our residents, that's a huge component of what we do. And this all lies in the heels of communication. And we're looking at testing tools currently in specific buildings across Minneapolis, where We're trying to integrate a work order management system for facilities management and vendor management to make sure that you can understand when something's been dispatched or scheduled, and then you can see live real-time status updates. With the prevalence of GPS and everything else, you shouldn't be questioning and wondering when that vendor is going to show up. We should be able to tie that in, and you should be able to look at a dashboard and say, this person is going to be here between these hours and these hours, or this truck is on the way, and you should be able to see all that. Technology is possible, and so we're trying to do that at FirstService over the next couple of years to reinvigorate our Connect platform to accommodate all those things that are out there from a needs-based perspective.
Exciting times ahead. We're talking to Broc Coen of FirstService Residential. We'll ask him to make a few more predictions and talk a little bit about HOA reform legislation right after this quick break. If you're an HOA board member with a desire to stay on top of HOA issues, now's your chance to join the fastest growing education association in Minnesota, the HOA Leadership Network. Our mission is to support HOA leaders through education, collaboration, and research. There are 4 chapter locations in the metro area. Membership is free, and meetings are monthly. For the schedule near you and to join, visit HOALeadershipNetwork.com. Welcome back to HOA Today. We're talking to the president of FirstService Residential Minnesota, Broc Coen. Broc, you've been very involved in the legislation that has been coursing through the Minnesota legislature, as we have. Our founder, Lynn Bergerhoff, testified in front of the House back in March. I testified in front of the Senate. I know that you testified as well, and you've been very involved in this legislation that seeks to reform HOAs. In your view, what do you see are some of the most concerning parts of this bill, knowing that we're as of this recording, we're getting to the very tail end of the legislative session? What are some of the things that give you some of the most pause?
A lot, Mike, I would say that. But more specifically, I think that the absence of the engagement of the experts in this space is probably the most disheartening, and I wish it were different. I feel like both from an HOA perspective and from a property management company perspective, and any affiliates for that matter, construction, maintenance, etc. I think we were all caught off guard, and the entirety of the session this year of the biennium, I think we've been playing catch up and reacting to a lot of things rather than being proactive and having proactive and engaging conversations with our legislators. That's been the most challenging and I would say, frankly, disappointing. I know that there was a task force assembled to try to address that at the beginning, but the amount of meetings they had was maybe a dozen or so meetings, and they met for 2 hours each. And so if you do the math on that and you think about it, collectively, they spent less than 1 week with a very small group of individuals, 30 or 40 members, albeit it was a cross-section or meant to be a cross-section of a representation of the industry. It really didn't hit the mark. It was too small, it was too niche, and it was too quick. And so 2 hours each meeting for a dozen meetings to address what is something that affects 1 in 4 Minnesotans is not enough. And that's probably first and foremost what I would say is of issue. I think that we've integrated very well. We had HOA Day at the Capitol. I think that we've reached out to our representatives across the state and across the region to try to engage, and the message was heard. But again, I think it was very reactionary. And so the absence of knowledge is probably of issue, especially as we go forward. If things don't go forward in this session, I presume that they'll be picked up in future sessions. And so I really, really hope that we can band together both from all the property management companies across the region, which we've done a really good job of, but then partner up with more deeply with CAI and HOA Leadership Network and create more of a stronger voice for all of us that are out there trying to protect that 1 in 4 Minnesotans, because there's almost 9,000 communities in the state from an HOA perspective. That's a lot of communities that generate a ton of tax revenue and a ton of service and support from a vendor perspective, from a jobs perspective, from all the property management companies. And remember, these are non-compensatory roles for board members. And so trying to pass and put in place guardrails for those boards to operate is very difficult when they don't understand, like I said, is some of the components and really important pieces, as we mentioned earlier, from an education perspective. It's hard to find board members, let alone put in more limitations for them to operate. And it really, I think it does is contrary to a productive effort. And I think it puts people in a bad spot, and they'll disengage. And so that's my fear. But I'm very hopeful that the work that we've done more recently in the last 2 months or so, we've partnered with local law firms, attorneys across the region, all the property management companies, like I mentioned. I think there was like 140 different companies represented on some of the calls we've been on. And so we are actually creating a forward-looking group. We've actually created a nonprofit agency to help with legislative actions and to help supplement and complement the activities that are already been in place from a CAI perspective or from the organization's perspective overall, and make sure that our voices are heard. So we look forward to getting things back on track, and we're hopeful, like I said, as you get to the tail end of this session, that we close things out on a good note. I think we've made great relationships and inroads with some of the legislators and senators that represent our great state, and so I look forward to that work continuing even outside of the session.
Well, we've been a champion of education over legislation, so we're definitely aligned in our viewpoint about this, and we'll continue to monitor, what happens in this legislative session, and perhaps it goes into a special session and gets addressed there, but we'll continue to monitor it. So as we wrap up here, let's talk about crystal ball predictions, Broc. You touched a little bit about how technology is changing things, but in general, if you could address how you feel property management will evolve, say, over the next 5 years. What kind of changes do you think HOAs can expect to see from property managers as technology evolves and as different approaches evolve in this industry?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I would say that technology, like we talked about, that's a big question mark. There's a lot of things happening in the AI space, and I think the opportunity there to help complement the manager's role and a lot of the other supporting cast roles that we have that support HOAs and communities and common interest communities. That's something that I'm really excited about. But then in addition to that, I would say that the board turnover is something that we endeavor to address. Like I mentioned, is through kind of that social capability or social networks. And by that, I don't mean like Facebook pages, right, where we bash management companies, we complain about our neighborhoods. It's more of that educational opportunity and connecting people so that they do have the answers, and they're the appropriate answers as to the questions that exist out there, because a lot of these things are myths and misconceptions, and that's an easy thing from my perspective to address. It's just the hardest thing because it requires constant communication and good communication, and in order to do that, it's hard to make sure that you're doing that on a frequent basis and you're giving relevant information. And I would point to, I guess, the legislative efforts, right? I think there was probably days where I was on calls 3 different times during the course of an 8-hour day, and things had changed dramatically from the language, right? So that's how fluid things are. And I think our ability to adapt and respond as property management companies to service our clients is going to continually be challenged and pressed. And so we're trying to make sure that at FirstService, again, we're preserving the life of the manager, and that work-life balance is protected so that we don't lose that tenure that we talked about earlier. And these great people that do these roles, that they support these communities, it's a really unique talent. And it takes a special person to do that. And we don't want to have that be something that we lose the integrity of going forward. So that the managers themselves, I think that's something that I'm curious about, is how can we continue to make their lives easier so that we do retain that talent base to support the communities. And then on the other side of the equation is the community support, is getting board members and keeping good board members. I think it's difficult for communities as you look at the turn for boards, right? Is there's a perspective and a focus, if you will, on either reducing dues or raising dues, and so you've got this seesaw effect, and I think that's going to continue to challenge us in the wake of the pandemic. Like I mentioned, I feel like we've talked about this for years, but it's been years in the making. Where again, the prevalence of interest and curiosity is not going to go away anytime soon, and so how do we continue to put questions and put inquiries in the right categories and the right lanes to get expeditious answers? That's always going to be a challenge for us. I think that the resident support service model, as I mentioned earlier, it helps with the manager day-to-day life activities to better support boards and better educate boards and maintain those communities in a planful manner. But it also is a detractor because it's an easy thing to just call or text. And so breaking those bad habits, I think, is probably one of the things that's going to be most difficult for us because it's hard, right? In the day of Amazon, I can get things tomorrow from across the world. And that sense of urgency or that expediency is really going to challenge us in this industry, I think, going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, the world is definitely a different place, and everything is happening at warp speed. Given all the
Yeah.
challenges that we've discussed, from HOA legislation to technological issues to to some infrastructure issues you've had to address, what is it, Brock, that sort of makes it all worthwhile for you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Before I joined FirstService, during the process of discovery and saying, is this the right fit for me and is it the right fit for FirstService? Through those conversations, I got asked this question a lot. And for me, it really it boils down to a couple of things. And one of those things is just the culture that we have at FirstService. I was really drawn to that. Not to say that there was an absence of culture where I was before, but I think the strength of the culture at FirstService, I was immediately drawn to. And it wasn't something that was just said. I heard it in every conversation of every discussion I had. And I think I spoke with 7 or 8 different people, all the way up to and including our CEO. And I felt that cultural sense of care and community at FirstService. That drew me to the company. And then to the business overall, I would say if I look back at my history and my career to date, the one thing that's been a commonality there has been buildings. The life cycle of buildings. I've either managed construction projects inside of buildings or helped develop buildings, design buildings. And I've always had this love for architecture. But I think taking care of buildings is the biggest thing for me because I love solving problems. And that's, I think, why I ended up where I am, is because it's nothing but a challenge every single day. And you get to engage with clients. I mean, if I looked at my 20 years of history with the Best Buy organization, huge customer service orientation. And I think that is just inside of my blood now. And that to me is paramount. And this is a customer service industry. I mean, that's what it is. You can say we're in the education industry, or you can say anything, but this is all about relationships and customer service. And that's what we're here to do. And I believe in that and I enjoy that. So my favorite thing used to be is to walk buildings or travel to buildings all across the country. And it's the same today. I love walking through buildings and looking what's different and where's opportunity to change things and designing new things. It should be a lobby or a common space or a new pool building. I mean, anything that's out there, right? So that I think is what I'm most interested in.
Good perspective. I'd be remiss, Brock, if I didn't ask you. We have a number of properties within our network that are self-managed. That is to say, they don't have a property manager. They aren't necessarily looking for one. They're handling it because perhaps of their size or just the makeup of their board. Do you have any advice you would give to those boards that are self-managed and how they can be successful?
Yeah, we have at FirstService, we have a small portion of our portfolio that is what we call financial only. So we help with the financial management of the community. And at the same time, we have access to all of our educational materials as well, right? Videos, blogs, how-tos and best practices, et cetera. But self-managed communities, we have taken on new clients that were self-managed in the past. And I think that the challenge there is embracing a new way of thinking and a new way of approach to managing a community. That's a little bit of a challenge, but I think most importantly is, again, that educational piece is how do you maintain that educational approach to, if you want to be self-managed because of monetary reasons or just size, or if it just doesn't make sense. That's certainly something that we want to do a better job at. And there's some local companies, some of our peer companies locally that do a nice job of some of their service offerings. And at FirstService, we're looking to expand our offerings as well so that all those smaller communities, it's still within reach to get access to the same things that the larger communities have access to. I believe in equality and equitable solutions. And so how do we make sure that we get out there and showcase and highlight the actual ability for people to engage in those smaller communities? And I think it's through communities or associations and networks like HOA Leadership Network. I think that you guys have done a tremendous job in reaching out and getting a fast following. And then I think that's where you're going to get access to those things for those communities.
Broc Coen, President of FirstService Residential. Great discussion and insights from you. Thanks for being with us today, Brock.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. I look forward to working with you in the future.
Don't forget to join our network. It is free for HOA leaders. Go to our website and join today. For HOA Today, I'm Mark Foster. This is the HOA Leadership Network.